In the AI arms race, there are bound to be conflicts over the governance regime, over the uses. One certainly developed last week. I guess this has been a bit of a long simmering feud between the Trump administration and Anthropic and its CEO, Dario Amodei. Such that last week, the Trump administration banned the use of Anthropic across government agencies, and Hegseth and Besant quickly followed a statement saying we're eliminating the use of Anthropic in our agencies. There was apparently a dispute over Anthropic's refusal to give the War Department carte blanche to use its technology as it sees fit. President Trump accused the CEO and his team, in his customarily subtle way, the left-wing nutjobs at Anthropic are trying to strong-arm the Department of War. And he called an undersecretary of defense called Dario Amodei a liar with a God complex who wants nothing more than to try to personally control the U.S. military and is okay putting our nation's safety at risk. So it's a little chippy, to say the least. And David Sachs, who's Trump's Bitcoin/AI czar, as it were, accused Amodei of trying to hamstring competitors and engaged in fear-mongering. Anthropic is running a sophisticated regulatory capture strategy based on fear-mongering. This was last year, he tweeted. It is principally responsible for the state regulatory frenzy that is damaging the startup ecosystem. So part of it is a disagreement over the AI governance model, where Amodei is seeking out regulation. So is Sam Altman at OpenAI. And that is not the posture of the David Sachses of the world and the all-in tech boys, as I understand it. Why don't we start there? That's a lot. Pleased to be joined again by Missy Cummings, who's a professor and director of Mason Autonomy and Robotics, the Mason Autonomy and Robotics Center at George Mason University. Missy Cummings, thanks for joining us. Appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
So, distill this war of words between the Trump administration and Anthropic for us.
Well, I think it's first really important to understand that whatever generative AI system that we're talking about, ChatGPT, Claude, Grok, they're just linear algebra on steroids. They don't think, they don't know, they don't understand, they don't reason, and they all make significant high frequencies of mistakes. So Dario, the CEO of Anthropic, he is correct when he says you should not use these in lethal autonomous weapons. No one should use them in any weapon of any sort. But the problem with this is, this is a Chicken Little situation, the boy who cried wolf. Dario has been driving the hype. He has been the worst out of all the CEOs of running around the country and the world and telling people that his models were going to be sentient, soon to be sentient, that his models needed a constitution to protect their personhood. So he was running around stoking fear, trying to get people to believe that he was doing something amazing with these models. And then when somebody who is unsophisticated like Pete Hegseth comes along, of course he believes him, and now he thinks he should be using these technologies in the weapons.
Dario's, among other dire predictions, he's talking about his model instigating mass unemployment, right? That's one of the things that he's concerned about. And then this other thing about autonomous weapons and mass surveillance programs and so forth. So is that, well, first of all, there's sort of a separate policy question on the government side, whether they should be doing those sorts of things. And then, but there's the capacity question that I think you're getting to, which is interesting, is even if the Trump administration wanted to use Anthropic to those ends, is it any position to achieve those ends with Anthropic?
No, I mean, none of them. And Sam Altman was more than happy to step into the gap, but this is something that is being hidden from the public, is just how terrible they are in terms of reliability. Does it matter if you're going to create that report for internal to work? Probably not. But if you're going to do something like control weapons with this technology, they absolutely will not work. And so I find that the whole debacle over, them trying to be banned and the media outcry, this is all for a technology that doesn't actually really work.
That's interesting. And so the other disruptive event that occurred where Anthropic was central was in the markets when it was essentially there was a perception that Anthropic, that model in particular, was going to mean the end of very popular, very profitable software platforms like Salesforce. There's another prediction sort of the end of software through AI. Even while a lot of these software companies are enjoying record revenues, what about that aspect of it? I mean, is AI anywhere near where that is? There's going to be that kind of market disruption that was suggested when the market tanked over that indication?
No. The idea that agentic AI is coming and that they're going to be able to harness these models to somehow put everyone out of work that does anything to do with back office tasks, it is so not true that I'm actually thinking about starting a company called Cleanup Crew. So because if you're dumb enough to take these technologies, fire a bunch of people, you are going to have to hire somebody like me to come in and clean up that mess.
Really? So all of the autonomous robots. So I know we've talked about this before, but we're still in the same place because there's a lot of pronouncements in that direction too. You mentioned what Dario said. We also have Musk talking about Optimus robots being droids being online by year's end and selling ultimately in the millions or more. I mean, where is all of that in terms of reality?
Yeah, Musk needs to throttle back on the ketamine. It is not going to happen. It is not going to happen at the end of this year. It's not going to happen at the end of next year. We are nowhere near having humanoid robots be able to perform tasks in unstructured environments like your house, like in manufacturing facilities, beyond robots in cages, which is where we have robots now, for example, in automotive manufacturing lines. But the idea that you can talk to a robot and have it go pick up a set of bolts, for example, across the manufacturing floor, we're still very, very far from that.
You're a colleague of sorts at George Mason, Tyler Cohen, who's an economist. He wrote this about a model for AI governance. I want to get your reaction. He wrote, "I trust private companies with strong AI more than I trust the government, regardless of which administration is in power. Yet if the federal government feels it has no say or control, it will lunge and take over the whole thing. We thus want sustainable methods of perpetual interference that are, A, actually somewhat useful from a safety perspective, and B, give government some control and the feeling of control, but not too much control. You should judge AI-related events within that framework." Well, I mean, as much as I like Tyler Cohen, that's a little bit gooey in terms of a governance model. Give government some control and the feeling of control, but not too much control. What does that look like exactly? But your reaction?
Yeah, I mean, I don't strongly disagree with that, but I think what he's missing in this statement is an understanding that the U.S. government, under either the Biden administration previously or Trump administration now, they don't have enough people on the inside that actually understand AI technology. They're making all their decisions based on what all the tech bros from Silicon Valley want them to believe because they want to increase their footprint for business. But the reality is these technologies don't work. And I recently wrote a paper and published it at the premier NeurIPS conference that laid out all of the error modes that these things are having. We're not even close to a technology that's really even reliably enough to use to write letters. A human has to sit and watch every single output that these technologies produce because the propensity for mistakes is so high. And if you don't have people on staff who understand where these failure modes are, then, for example, like Pete Hegseth, he's got the worst possible set of advisors who let him go down that path for a technology that was never worth it in the first place.
So where we are right now is there are large language models and flawed large language models at that. We're maybe in like the stage 2, even just of the limited LLM function.
I mean, I think that they are useful for some purposes. I like to use them, for example, for image generation, so I don't have to worry about copyright violations, although it still, remains to be seen whether or not the copyright were violated in the creating of the large language model. So this is not to say that there's not some utility in these models, but all of them are highly error-prone. This is where you get 6 fingers in the images that they will often produce. We need a whole new employment sector of LLM babysitters, which are going to be humans. And this is actually akin to the self-driving car problem. It finally caught the public's attention a couple of weeks ago that, it turns out there are humans babysitting every single self-driving car. They're not actually really self-driving. So I think that is going to continue to be the modus operandi for AI for the foreseeable future. They're going to need significant human oversight, which means that indeed we're not actually replacing jobs. We're actually going to make them more expensive, the humans more expensive.
How much of an issue is the data center matter and power for these AI companies, particularly after Trump, in his State of the Union address, proposed requiring companies to build their own power plants rather than connect to the existing electric grid, so you're not driving up prices for consumers? Essentially, was the idea. But the need for these massive data centers and power sources to power these AI products.
Absolutely. I mean, it is a concern. I live in Washington, D.C. area. We have more data centers per capita than anywhere else in the country, and my utility bills are out of sight. And so there's definitely a revolution about to happen in Northern Virginia over these issues. And so they do need to think about this. But what I'm worried about is if companies are going to if they're going to be given the option to take the easy way out, they will. For example, they will just build more and bigger data centers if they think they can get away with it, as opposed to spending the research dollars to figure out how to optimize these processes so that they don't take so much power. Building more data centers is not the only solution here. There are more elegant ways to get the performance out of the LLMs that you want without having to use all the water in a particularly regional area. So I do think that the current administration is rewarding speed over thoughtfulness when it comes to data centers.
Missy Cummings is professor and director of the Mason Autonomy and Robotics Center at George Mason University. Professor Cummings, thanks for joining us again. Appreciate it.
Always a pleasure.
And she joined us on Chicago's Morning Answer.
There's only one radio show in Chicago talking about today's biggest stories and telling you what they really mean. That show is this one, Chicago's Morning Answer on AM 560, The Answer. Take the journey of living a happy, successful, and meaningful life through God. Listen to It's Time with Dan Lights, Sunday mornings at 9 on our sister station, AM 1160.